persons of quality. So what I did here is I went through my copy here of Death of a Salesman Act 1, and I took all kinds of notes. And so what I did is I collated these notes, and I wanted to make sure that I just simply walked you through some significant pages and some specific details so that you would have a better idea, sort of a better method to go through and take notes on the play. And that's exactly what this lesson is designed to do. So I'm going to take significant elements, significant character interactions, and spend some time making sure that you and I are absolutely on the same page. I turn the light back on. I can't quite see my notes. So this is the copy that you have. I'm going to start on pages 38 and 39 in the text. So one of the significant sort of images that we develop is that Miller has Willie confuse the present with the past and his fantasies and those kinds of things. So when you juxtapose Linda, his wife, with the woman he's having an affair with, who we see simply in shadows and laughter and stage direction, I think this becomes a significant idea. So on pages 38 and 39 in your text, contrast Linda with the woman Willie's having an affair with. If you look at the cover of the play, beneath the suitcase are a pair of nylon stockings. And that becomes sort of a significant or recurring image at the very least in the play. Willie buys new stockings for the woman he's having an affair with. He lavishly spends money on this dream of something better than what he has specifically at home. So he spends money on the stockings. He spends money to make himself look far flashier, far better than he is. In Act 1, right around page 39, we see his wife mending, or darning is the old term, her stockings because Willie won't buy or can't buy her new ones. Linda claims that they can't afford, Willie says specifically that they can afford to buy new ones, and so Linda, why are you wasting your time mending those socks? Well, that's a tremendous irony. It's the difference between the illusion that Willie lives in and the reality of life. Just like the whole salesman concept that we're learning about Willie Loman is transparent and fraudulent. He claims that he's the best salesman in New England, but he doesn't do any business. He can't get himself in the car to where he needs to be because he keeps running out of energy. The text suggests that he runs out of energy because all he does is fail in his sales attempts. All of the joy and all of the reputation that he may have once had seems to certainly have faded by the time Miller writes this play. If you look at page 38 again in the text, Willie says, "Cause I get so lonely." There is a void, an emptiness in Willie, and he's trying to fill that void. He's unsuccessful as a salesman. He's fraudulent as a husband. So there's a void that he's trying to fill, and this reflects his lost sense of opportunity, his squandered dreams, his failed sons. All kinds of failure add up and sort of stack up against Willie Loman here as we get further into the detail and analysis of Act 1. I wrote in my notes that life seems to pass him by. Look at how Miller carefully juxtaposes Ben and Charlie here in the middle to end of Act 1. Ben, his brother, and Charlie, the significance of that interaction. So my note says, what is revealed through the clash of the conversation in real time that Willie has with Charlie and the imagined one he has with Ben? I'm going to ask you about this when it comes to a test, and you probably should look at this when you are writing a final essay for Death of a Salesman, as we're approaching the middle of May and the impending closing of our school year. So again, look at the juxtaposition of Ben and Charlie. What is revealed through the clash of conversations in real time, and then the imagined conversation that Willie has with Ben as Willie's working through his thoughts. Why does Willie feel that he's not good enough? I think at the core of this play, in The Death of a Salesman, the death of a dream. You can even go so far as saying this play is about the death of the American dream. Why does Willie feel he's not good enough as a man, as a husband, etc., etc.? Did Willie ever walk into the jungle? As Ben says over and over again, it becomes a metaphor, a recurring theme here in the play. Does Willie ever walk into the jungle? If he hasn't, or if he doesn't, how does he expect to ever walk out with diamonds? Ponder that as a central theme in Death of a Salesman and how that functions. As I was further going through my notes for the significant analysis of Act 1, it dawned on me that you should have in your notes a physical description of Willie Loman's home as it is described in the text. I'm especially struck by the fact that it seems to be a perfectly normal, quaint home, but it is sort of in the shadow of progress, in the shadow of larger buildings, the success of industry of everybody else except for the Loman household. Very much the idea that something is moving and passing Willie by, and he can't really do anything about it. I find it very significant that this reflects Willie's relationship with Biff and Happy. His two sons certainly suffer from the broken dreams and the unreachable expectations of his father. Perhaps that's a tragic flaw. Perhaps that's a significant problem in the play. Now, I say it that way because I want you to write it down in your notes. Describe the physical appearance of the Loman home as it is described in the text. How does it appear when placed against its surroundings? Is it dwarfed by progress? What about the metaphor of the garden? Now, this relates specifically to one or two of the articles that I posted for you to the right-hand side of the topic in Mudge. What about this metaphor, this idea that Willie has about seeds, and this metaphor about the garden, this idea of planting something significant that he can be remembered by? Now, if you remember, I gave you a graphic that talks about several different themes that you can write down in your notes. That's another piece that goes along with the articles that I posted for you. This way you can form the material and the background stuff that you need as you go through this on your own. Does Willie feel trapped? How is Willie trapped by his feelings of regret? Now, again, you can look at that any way you want. If you say that Willie is not trapped, it's going to color how you look at the second question I just voiced. How is Willie trapped by his feelings of regret? I said a moment ago that Willie Loman might be a tragic character. Now remember, if he's a tragic character, he has to have a significant tragic flaw. So identify what you think that hamartia, Hamartia, is for Willy Loman. Is it his distorted sense of reality? Is it his unreachable dreams? Maybe instead of unreachable, I want to say unrealistic. Figure out what you might think Willy Loman, what his tragic flaw might be, his hamartia. And of course, as you look through the remainder of the play, if he has a hamartia, what is his anagnorisis? Anagnorisis. The anagnorisis is the moment of realization of his tragic flaw. Now, of course, that's going to come later in Act 2. But again, I think that's an interesting idea. How is Willy Loman sort of hamstrung by his feeling of regret? Of course, I'm going to ask you to find details to support these concepts. I'm going to ask you to find how Death of a Salesman reflects the major characteristics of American modernism that I have since provided to you. So you've got a lot of connections that I want to see you make. You're going to do the exact same thing as we move into the next couple of pieces, specifically Slaughterhouse-Five, which is the last novel that we're going to read. So I really think that's going to be some important direction for you. So I wrote, find specific details to support the idea about Willy's feelings of regret, and find specific detail to reflect the idea that Willy Loman feels trapped. Examine how Willy has an overdeveloped sense of fairness. Do you believe that's true? That he has an overdeveloped sense of fairness, and this sort of colors how he sees the world around him? I want to use the phrase, seeing the world through rose-colored glasses. But if I wanted to be like, or if I wanted to reference The Great Gatsby, I would say, seeing the world through green-colored glasses. Hopefully, that comparison rings a bell. So does Willy have an overdeveloped sense of fairness, or is he just a hypocrite? And how is this reflective of American modernism? I think a good hint for you would be to go to page 48 and to attend or to look at the stage directions and how certain scenes are accompanied by a flute. Because if you read the play, you get the impression, or you learn very specifically, that Willy's father played the flute. And I certainly get the sense that Willy's father gave Willy a bunch of dreams, but not quite the ability to pursue those dreams. So that's why I think the flute takes on a mood, or takes on an overwhelming theme of sadness or tone of sadness as you go through the play. So I think certainly there's some ideas here that you want to write down in your notes and make sure that you have an understanding of as you move forward. So as I'm looking here at my notes, I originally started this piece on page 51, but instead I want to move over to pages 40 and 41 because I think thematically this one's incredibly important. So there's an old phrase called the sins of the father, and it's the idea that young men are hamstrung or trapped because of the decisions of their fathers, and more specifically, based on the sort of convoluted, distorted values that sons get ultimately from their fathers. I think of all the works that we're going to look at, this is absolutely going to be true of Death of a Salesman. Uh, we know, and again, the notes I have here is Bernard cheats for Biff, uh, and openly does it. And Willie specifically is open about having Bernard cover for Biff. Now, I think specifically in there is the idea that Willie, probably deep down inside, and part of Willie's corruption is the idea that he knows Biff doesn't have what it takes. And Bernard, who is this super intelligent, super successful, super vision moving forward kind of kid, calls Biff out on it to his father, and he says if he doesn't pass math, he's not going to go to college. And I think that's this huge storm cloud hanging over Willie Loman, because if you look at the characterization of Biff in Act 1, this failure to launch, this lack of success, this lack of any kind of personal motivation, this all has a very significant impact on Biff's forward progress. But even more weighs tremendously on Willie Loman and Willie's understanding of his own role as a father. So if Biff doesn't pass math, he can't go to college. Well, that's going to completely relate to what it says in Act 1 about how Biff wanders. He hasn't settled down. He hasn't achieved. He's returned home after, I think it says 6 years away, where he's been totally unsuccessful about establishing his own life and doing anything of great value. Right around 40, 41, Willie reflects that Biff is loaded with spirit and personality. Biff has everything that Willie thinks is of great value. He has the ability to greet people. He has great personal character. And as Willie says over and over again, he's not just liked, he's well liked. Of course, notice the irony here. It's not about the value of the individual, it's about whether or not people like him. The real value for Willie Loman is not in character, not in morals and values. Of course, illustrated by the fact that Willie has a girl on the side of the stockings and all of this, and when Linda finds out, it's disastrous. I think all of these things are going to be significant. My notes says Willie reflects that Biff is loaded with spirit and personality. But how far is this really going to get Biff in life? How far did it get Willie Loman in life? Realistically and specifically speaking. Is Willie crippled by the same illusions that he is transferring onto Biff through the course of the story? Now, I think that's going to be huge in the development of theme going out of Act 1. Has Willie Loman crippled Biff with the same illusions, with an I, that he himself suffers from? If you look at page 51 in your text, Biff is a thief, and he openly admits to being a thief. He steals the sporting equipment. He later on steals. He later on takes advantage of women because it gets him further ahead. Biff is a thief, but is it really Willie's fault? Because Willie crippled Biff with unreachable expectations. I think that's of great value to our understanding of the American dream and how modernism reflects these changes in culture. Look at what Willie says on page 52. His fear, he says, I'm afraid I'm not teaching them the right kind of fill in the blank. He's not teaching them the right kind of morals and values, and that's going to be hugely crippling and hugely connected to the themes of modernism in this play. So I think there's a lot here that's important for us to look at. As I bring this portion of the lecture sort of to a close here, I've got two last ideas. On page 55, Linda is hugely concerned about Willie. Now, here's a question that I think you should be able to answer. Why is Linda so sympathetic to Willie? All the stuff that he's done, she knows about his affairs. She knows he's a failure. So why is she so sympathetic to Willie as a character? What does she see in him that no one else can? I go back to my definition of the American dream here. Can she see beneath his sort of gilded exterior to find a man that is of more value? I think ultimately at the end, does that really even mean anything? Does Linda's perception of Willie really have an impact in the play? Because if you go right near the end of Act 1, we start talking about Willie Loman and suicide. Specifically, Linda comments on the fact that Willie Loman keeps crashing the car. But if the insurance finds out that Willie killed himself, Linda wouldn't receive any money. So Willie's got the motivation to take care of his family, but he's going about it the wrong way. So that's why all of the things about the car are significant. I see, why does Willie crash the car? Why is this the only way out for Willie Loman? Act 1 ends with the significant discovery that Biff makes of the rubber hose and how it's attached to a nipple on the bottom of the furnace. Now, gas furnaces, they make carbon monoxide and they provide exhaust. Provide might not be the best word, but they give off exhaust, and the nipple on the furnace is where the exhaust comes out. So Biff discovers a rubber hose attached to this exhaust outlet on the furnace. That's there because this clearly points to the fact that Biff understands that Willie is trying to kill himself. But he's helpless to do anything about it. He's very much helpless to do anything about it in the play. As we get to the end of that act, we can clearly make the assertion that Willie still sees Biff as the hero, the great hope, the hero that he cannot be. So Biff is significant because Willie lives through the successes of his own child. This is setting Willie up for nothing but failure. There's a work by Sherwood Anderson called The Egg, and there's a line in there about you put all this hope in chickens, you put all this hope in children, and what do? They throw themselves under the bus. They throw themselves underneath the wheels of a wagon, or they get diseases, and there's all these things that get in the way of children being successful. And I think this is what Willie Loman is ultimately suffering from. He says on page 68 of his own son that he is like a young god, Hercules. A star like that can never really fade away. Biff has all of this extraordinary potential. He's a star that can never really fade away. But he can get so dim that he has absolutely no impact on the world. Shortly after that, Willie says, "I'm so tired. Don't talk anymore." We see that Willie is broken by the unbearable burden that is part of this crushing reality that he lives under. And I think that's going to be of great significance as you walk yourselves through Act 1 of The Death of a Salesman.